which I'll do, which says it's recording now. So everybody out there, again, in Facebook land on Creative Puppets Live, everywhere else on UK events, please welcome Miraiker. Yay!
Hey. Well, thank you for inviting me, Ian.
Yeah, I kind of get deja vu. I'm not totally sure why, but I kind of get deja vu. So, for those few people that don't know you, Miraiker, can you, for the first time, just explain a little bit about your past?
Of course, I'd be pleased to. Well, I first started doing Punch and Judy 23 years ago, when my son was born. And I'd seen my first Punch and Judy show just a few years before that, which was performed by Peter Batty. And he came to my daughter's 6th birthday party to perform that. And as we say, he never left. So there was Punch and Judy all around me. And I thought eventually I gave in and decided to give it a go. And just decided, well, what a lot of fun this is. It's so much better than a proper job. So I started doing Punch and Judy shows. Then I thought I'll build my own stuff. So I started making some puppets, and then some people asked me to make puppets for them. So it grew and it grew. And I have quite a short attention span. So I have to keep doing something different. So I've ended up making lots of silly props and different booths and different puppets. And I do think that with the variety of performing and being in the workshop, I have the best job in the world.
There we are. We're definitely rather privileged, aren't we, on what we do, to be able to. Well, I say that in this current climate, I know it's very difficult because of the situation. Not any entertainers' fault, because of the. And I'm not going to say the C word.
It's been a strange year.
Yes, strange year. But you've been working today.
I have. I've been really lucky. I've been at a lovely farm park called Old MacDonald's Farm Park in Brentwood in Essex, and today I've been doing not Punch and Judy, but my Christmas puppet show. Lots of fun. It has a Grinch in it, and elves and Santas and things, and all sorts of very strange props. And it's been a real privilege to be able to get back out there and do a show.
Is that the Grinch I can see in the back there? That lovely character.
Yeah, my little that's one of my Grinches there. He's new this year. I hadn't made Grinches before, but I wanted to make a Grinch because the farm asked me about having a Grinch in the show. So I went to try and get the character for the Grinch. I went to the man I thought would be the expert and asked Dan Slater what was the iconic Grinch character that I should be basing it on. And he pointed me to the Jim Carrey. And so my Grinch sounds just like Jim Carrey now.
So how did you get into? I know, just going back just a couple of years, so you started performing. Do you mind me asking how old you was when you started performing?
Oh, I was 32 when I did my first show. I had a baby that was 3 weeks old in a sling round my neck while I did my first show.
Was you tempted to use him in the show?
He's been in a lot of shows. He started off, he used to be in the show with me. Sometimes my daughter would look after him outside and then he got bigger. So I got a little stool and sat him in the back of the booth with me so I could keep an eye on him while I was doing a show.
You didn't have to throw him out the window, no?
I didn't, just because, you can only use one hand per puppet, you see, and he was a bit big to pick up one-handed. So I had a substitute baby to throw. But he did get big enough so that he thought it was fun to move the puppets about. So I never knew where they were. And that's when I decided he was big enough to be out the front instead of in the booth with me.
That must have been a challenge anyway, to be performing and having to thinking for yourself for the puppets and also being a mom as well as an entertainer, multitasking?
I don't know. I think performers are naturally multitaskers. You know, when you're doing any sort of performing, you always have so many things, you know, whether you've got your hand in the right place for the next puppet, or the props in the right place, or what the audience is saying back to you, whether, you know, you've got to change things. It's part of what we do, isn't it?
I suppose so, and reading the audience and that. How do you read that from beyond the screen? How do you read the audience from beyond the screen?
How do you read the
Read
audience?
the audience from behind, from within the booth.
Oh, well, in my booth, I'm working with my hands in front of my face. I've got a printed scenery in front of me and a blackout behind me so that I can't be seen, but I can see out, and I can see all the audience. So you know exactly which child is about to throw a stone at you.
So
And you
what
can
was your
chuck a
first
policeman up
setup?
and stop him. Hmm?
What was your first setup? Your first setup. So how did you go about your first show? Was it a new setup, a second-hand setup? Did you have a mentor?
Well, Peter Batty, who I'd first seen doing the show, he had some puppets spare that he wasn't using that were made by Brian Clark. So we got together a set that I could use. We had a carpenter build my first booth as a copy of one of his, and Brian Clark painted all the proscenium up for me. And so I got all of that, had all that together, that I didn't have to make myself at all. And then as time went on, and the show I first did was Peter's show. I did it almost word for word, except for the bits I forgot to do. So I did a poor version of it. And then as time went on, I developed it myself, and then I made my own puppets, my own booth, and the show I do now, it certainly still has elements of that first show, but it's moved on in lots of different ways.
And I know you mentioned beforehand, it may have been off camera on, you going into producing, actually making the Punch and Judy as well. What mentality got you to that point? Was it the fact that you wanted something different, or how did that come about?
It was just, I think it's just my short attention span. I'm always having to be doing something different. So I start off and I think, well, I've done this show, but I'm going to do the same show and I need something different. Wouldn't it be nice to make my own puppets? And I had there was a puppet carver. He's not with us anymore, sadly, Bob Wade, who very kindly took an interest in me and gave me 2 pieces of lime wood to start me off, and said, gave me some instructions on keeping safe and not losing my fingers. And he said, these 2 pieces of lime would be for me to practice on, and they'll probably end up in the bin. And I have to say, they're both still in my show. So
So what? So you had to learn to carve. You had to
learn to
learn
carve.
learn
Yeah.
to.
I taught myself how to carve. Bob showed me how he mortised in his noses. So I was ahead there already, because I could see what he'd done. Taught myself how to carve, and then I made up some patterns to make costumes, and then and bit by bit, I feel like I've really improved over the years. But I have this theory: there is nothing you can't do if you really want to. So when people say to me, I'd really like you to make, and they come out with something that I'd never even considered before, first I say yes, and then I go away and work out how on earth I'm going to do it. So yeah, I'm not very good at saying no, I think.
Yeah. Did you get tips on that point at that point as well, on different types of paint to use, or varnishes,
Well,
finishes?
actually, Bob just said that he used Woolworth's gloss paints. I can't get them anymore. So, so I've worked, you know, I just found out that, you know, the wood, as long as your wood is really well primed, you can put most glosses onto it. But all my finishing stuff, I use enamels because I just like the way they work. And I varnish lots and lots on top of every poppet because they take quite a hammering. So plenty of hardening with the varnish.
Yeah. And what about different types of woods? Does that make a big difference when you're making them?
It does. And I use English lime wood because it's one of the softest of the hardwoods. So you've got a nice balance between weight and strength. And then we've got punch here somewhere. Let's take the punch down. So they're going to get bashed a lot. So if the English lime is quite a soft, it's quite soft to carve, but it has a really good finish. And if you put the noses and chins in with the grain, so the grain of the poppet goes down this way, the grain of the nose and the chin go this way. So it means they can't, you know, if you give them a really good bash, they can't break off in the middle or anything like that. And yeah, it's you start off, but you know, very tentative. I think my first puppet took me about absolutely forever to carve, and now they don't take, you know, half the time because you just develop your own style and get used to it.
Is that your style punch as well? Is that unique to you as a builder?
Yeah, well, if you ask punch people, if you show a punch to a punch performer, most of them will be able to tell you immediately who carved it. It amazes me, but yeah, they all take a look and they'll say that's a Miraiker punch, or that's a Brian Clark punch, or our lovely friend down in Australia, Chris van der Kratz, he has his own style, and people can recognise them. I mean, every poppet is different. This, you know, the noses are different sizes, different shapes. They're all different, but there is something in them that tell people that they're mine. I don't know what it is, but
yeah. One thing I've noticed, this might be because I don't perform punch, even though I love punch, is it's so instantly recognised, and yet well, I couldn't even tell you how many different punches that I've seen, but they're instantly recognised straight away, aren't they?
they really are. Yeah, and they're not always even dressed in red, so it can't even be that. But there's just something about punch that, just that cheeky grin, isn't it? And you know he's going to get, you know, in my mind, he's like a 6-year-old child.
Miraiker, it's your hand up there. That's what's inside of it.
Pardon?
Your hand up inside it. That's what gives it the vitality.
Oh yes, probably. It probably is. And I made a prop that I made a doctor, and I wanted him to have a toupee, and for the toupee to lift off. So I worked out that if I put a magnet in Punch's right hand and a corresponding piece into the doctor's hairpiece, he could lift the doctor's hairpiece right off. So now I put a magnet in every Punch's right hand, because you never know what you might want to do with that.
I can relate to that. We had this conversation in the week, didn't we?
Yeah.
And it's a great idea as well with the magnets for picking things up, and
Yeah.
just handy to have as a prop. Is our Father Christmas I can see at the back as well?
Oh, I think I've got. Oh yeah, we've got a Santa here. Well, it is Christmas, so we have to have Santa, don't we? There he is, and I think quite a lot of puppeteers have got a Santa, but you know, to put into their Christmas shows. But he needs to make an appearance, you know, this time of year.
Do you make the hands as well? I'm just looking at the hands of him in there.
Yeah, these are lime as well, and I carve all the hands. They've got inside the hand, there's a piece of wood that goes up the back of the sleeve here, just to about here. And so that my thumb here is in front of that, which means that you've got control right to the fingertips, even though your thumb only comes to here. So you've got that extension up there to to help you control them better.
That looks like very intricate work working on the hands there. Did you ever get to a point where you think if I go any more, he's going to lose one of his fingers? He'll end up as a Dave Allen punch or Dave.
Yeah, well, sometimes that can happen and they disappear. I have to say, making the hands is the bit I like the least. Because I don't like to make them too flat. I like to give them a bit of shape, and they always seem a lot of work for very little.
I think it sets the character though.
Yeah.
I think on your building, the effort's definitely worth it because you can see.
Yeah, I think it is worth doing it, but that's the bit I'd give up if I could. But he has to have them.
Yeah. So in Punch and Judy, this will probably sound a stupid question, but Punch is obviously the key character. But in every show you do you always have a Punch, or as a puppeteer, do you have different shows as well?
I have different shows. Again, short attention span. I started with just Punch and Judy, and then I thought I need a show to take into schools. And so you have a look at the national curriculum, and traditional tales comes up very prominently. So I set to making myself a set of the Three Little Pigs, which brings its own challenges because, you know, as a lone performer doing the Three Little Pigs, it's there's not enough arms, so you have to solve that problem as well. And so I started doing that. And I had a triple stand so I could bring up 3, but then I had to have one of the bits removable so that they could come up as 2 and things like that. So I started doing the Three Little Pigs, and since then I do Red Riding Hood and a number of others, Jack and the Beanstalk and things. And at the moment I'm doing this Christmas show which doesn't have Punch in at all, but Punch and Judy is my favourite. It's the one I enjoy doing the most.
Is Judy? Is there any? Well, Punch and Judy and the alligator and the policeman. Is there any unwritten rule that they need to look a certain way, or have you more or less got freedom of?
Well, I think you've probably got a certain amount of freedom, but if people don't recognise them for what they are, I mean, I made the old style 50s policeman at the start with the, but then I decided I should have a modern policeman, so I changed that, and I've changed quite a few things. Nobody seems to mind when you bring things a bit up to date. I have a doctor in green hospital scrubs instead of the old traditional one with the bow tie and the, you know, consultant type thing. Nobody seems to mind. I like updating things, and I like giving things a bit of a twist. So I sunk LEDs, red LEDs in my devil's eyes so that his eyes can light up, and my policeman has blue flashing eyes. So just because I think it's fun.
Yeah, I think I noticed as well, and I think Professor Dan mentioned as well. Some of the props that you make are kind of well, I don't know if they're unique, but to me they seem very unique, like the bath and different things.
Yes, Dan asked for a bath, and so I made him one up out of all sorts of bits that I could find. But then I now have made a mould so that I can make them out of fiberglass and put little feet on them and things. Dan's a great one for giving me a challenge. Dan Slater he's so inventive with what he puts into his shows, and when he comes up with a new idea, he'll often say, "This is what I want you to make," and then I get to go away and work out how it's all going to work, and I do enjoy the challenge.
Yeah, he's definitely got another level on the thinking when he comes to shows and things like that. But he's also got obviously confidence, and other Punch and Judy professors have got confidence in your building and what you can produce.
Well, that's really nice. Yeah, that seems to have developed over the years, and I know I originally had a sausage machine that was very square and wooden and things, and then set to making a mold so I could make one out of fiberglass.
See,
And
this amazes me. Sorry to interrupt you there. I'm intrigued in that part there. I meant to mention before when you mentioned the bath and that you did it. So rather than just make one and do it, you actually take it to the next level and think, well,
yeah.
I'm going to mould these. So did you have to learn about, when did you learn about fiberglassing?
Well, do you know, there is this absolutely amazing resource, Google. You go on Google, and then, you know, and there's whatever you want to do, somebody's made a YouTube video about it.
Yeah, I was going to say YouTube, it's all there.
It is everything. There is nothing you can't learn from YouTube. It's wonderful. It's a wonderful resource. So yeah, fiberglassing was brand new for me. I'd never done it, and I didn't know anything about it. And so I watched a lot of videos and found out, read a lot.
It's messy, but it works, and it's very strong and light.
It is messy, isn't it? Very messy. That's when I first invested in the blue gloves to protect your hands.
Oh yeah, well with glues as well, and a mask. I hope you wear.
Yeah, when I started originally with a cheap dust mask on elastic, I've moved up and up and up. Extraction has become, you know, a major thing now.
Yeah, that was the first thing I put in, extraction, because I've got no windows in my workshop, and if you're using resins or anything like that, then it's cheaper than the pub but not as healthy.
Yeah, exactly.
Miraiker, here, this is a fiberglass punch head that I made.
Oh wow!
So
I'm just hang on a sec there, Peter. I'm going to pin you. I'm going to pin you in.
okay. Anyway, here, this is fiberglass.
Did you make a mold for it? Did you make a mold for it then?
Yeah. I make a plasticine mold model, plaster over the top, and then to layer it up. So
fantastic.
It's messy, but works. So he's waiting for his costume.
And will you make that?
No, I have to find somebody who can sew. I don't need it right now. So anyway, okay.
But you'll get there.
There's a specialist lady in the room that could probably help you with that, Steve. Peter.
Yeah, I never did sewing as a youngster, but I've got the hang of it now.
It's definitely different because I bought some Pelham puppets. I'm not a collector of Pelham puppets, but I wanted to do a separate show. A CLVI a show
yes,
safe, and because I wanted them to use and not to collect, I could get at a good price because I bought terrible condition puppets basically, but I remade parts and redressed them, and it's fiddly. So how fiddly, you know, dressing something like this is a lot easier than dressing something like that. So do you keep all the patterns for your clothing and everything?
Yeah, I have I made up some patterns in the first place, but I'm forever altering them. My main pattern for a punch costume or something like that, I've got a different pattern for the front to the back, because obviously when you've got your hand in it, you don't need a lot of space there, or you can't reach to the end of the hand, but you need plenty of space around the back. So the back is much bigger than the front. But on the pattern, I have got all sorts of notes written all over it. So I've got customers that have particularly large hands. So I'll have somebody's name and an arrow saying extra 2.5 centimeters this way for that person, and extra, or close this up by 10 millimeters for this person. So my patterns are written all over depending on the customer. And I had a really, really nice job, because there's last year, there's a band called the Libertines, and they wanted puppets of the band because they were going to be doing a show on Southend Beach, and would I make them? And I said I'd be really glad to. And luckily, just before it happened, I discovered who the puppeteer was going to be. Otherwise, he'd never have got his hands in them. Because he's a customer of mine with huge hands.
His first name John without saying anything else.
No, his name is Gary.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
So yeah, it helps to know who you're making for, so that you can make sure it's going to fit them.
Yeah, I had a guy a couple of years ago wanting a hand puppet, and I asked him to send me an outline of his hand so I could judge the size for it, because we're all different sizes. And it was on 2 pieces of A4 paper. I mean,
Wow.
spread out like that, it wouldn't fit on 1 piece of A4 paper. They were side by side, and I thought, this is going to be a small puppet. It's not going to be an hand puppet.
Yeah, it's good to know though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great that you can build that in as well, rather than, somebody can have it bespoke to fit their hand, rather than off the shelf and then get it home and then or get it delivered and it's uncomfortable to operate. So that must be.
I mean, I have sort of standard sizes, but I do a child size as well, because you get a lot of young performers start when they're very young. So I do a much smaller size. But if you know who it's going to be, I mean, like I make the punches right-handed, because obviously when you've got your hand in a puppet, your thumb and your fingers are not at the same level, and so it matters.
I never thought of that.
So with punch, this arm is slightly higher and at a different angle to this arm, so that it fits your right hand, because most puppeteers use punch on their right hand. So you have to just check that if they're going to be using him left-handed, which is quite rare. You need to know that in advance, because it'll be really uncomfortable if you've got it wrong.
And I suppose if they're using 2 puppets, the other puppet needs to be.
I make Judy's left-handed. There's a few puppets you put them both level at the same, which is not, ideal, but it's things like a monkey that might move from one hand to the other. So you try and make it more universal. But punch is going to be on your hand for a long time. You want him to be comfortable.
Yeah. How do you, with a comfort and that? Because if you pick up a soft puppet, normally it's really soft as you go in. They haven't really got a wooden entrance to go into the head. So how do you overcome that problem?
Well, he's got one hole for one finger right inside his head, and the costume just guides you there, because when you're doing punch, all your puppets hang up in the booth, and they're all hanging upside down, because it's much easier if they're hanging. You can just dive your hand in and everything will go into the right place. Much harder to put a puppet on with one-handed if it's not hanging up, because you're trying to wiggle your hand.
Have to start with the puppets like on a certain side. Then is that how it works?
Yes. In my booths, I have puppet hooks all around both sides and the front. And on the right hand side, you've got punch and a couple of others. Most of them are on the left, and a few at the front that could go either way. Okay. So loads of puppet.
I'm left-handed, so would that mean that I had to change the way, if I was to be a punch and Judy person, I'd have to change the way I do my show, sort of thing?
No, you'd have to choose. I mean, if you because punch is up for the most time, so a right-handed person tends to be more comfortable using him on their right hand. But if you chose to do it left-handed, you would just have to have puppets that were made so that punch was made as a left-hander instead of a right-hander. Okay. You can choose. But traditionally, he's a right-hander.
Besides, if you're right-handed, you need to be able to have a slapstick in action.
Well, the slapstick sits across here, goes up my thumb. So have I got a slapstick? I haven't got a slapstick here. But if punch is on your hand, then I'm holding the slapstick along there, so that as I'm moving my thumb like that, the stick can hit. And so that's how I'm holding it. Punch's quite happy with that.
Do you make the slapsticks yourself as well, Miraiker?
Yeah, I make the slapsticks out of oak, just because I've tried all different woods and I've tried plywood ones, but an oak slapstick makes such a good noise. It's, you know, it's really great sound.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, that's probably why a lot of wooden instruments that are made of heavy woods, aren't they? Because they're giving a better.
They do, and of course they last longer. They're you know, they won't break so easily.
Does everybody put the crocodile in, or is that kind of an extra?
Oh no, I think everybody has Punch and Judy and a baby. Everybody has a policeman and a crocodile, and most people have a clown, and they'll either have a devil or a ghost. So but then there's lots of extras you can have. Some people have a Toby dog or a monkey. Some people have a pair of boxers to do a boxing match, a doctor. There's loads of extras you can put in. I think in my booth I've generally got about 14 different puppets.
Wow.
They don't all appear in every show, but yeah.
So what funny stories have happened while you've been performing on there? I'm just trying to imagine you now. You're in the booth, and you got all the puppets all around you, and you've got your little lad also on a stool, which for a youngster must be like somebody in a candy shop. Have you ever gone for a puppet and then all of a sudden he's
not there? Oh, he used to do that. He is 23 now, I've got to say. He doesn't come in the booth anymore. He's currently in Lakeside Grotto being an elf. So he doesn't come in the booth anymore. But yeah, he would move them round because he thought it was funny. And he'd think, you know, if I moved them, if I moved this, if I swapped this from this, and often, you know, you'll be doing a show, and even if he's not there, you'll put your hand in something because you've got distracted by something that's happening in the audience, and you look up and you think, well, you're not supposed to be up there, so you'll have a sudden appearance from a puppet who has, you know, no relation to what's going on, so you just give him something to say and send him back down again. But yeah, I frequently put the wrong puppet up or the wrong prop, or you start a show and you realise that actually something really important is still in the bag, and you have to work your way around it.
Yeah, I think we've all done that on performing on anything where we've set up in a rush, and then halfway through a routine you go to get something and you think, oh, this isn't going to go quite as well as I thought, but
I think, don't you think though, that all performers get really good at winging it?
I think so. I think it is, and that's from experience as well. I think we had the conversation with Dan on reading the audience or somebody shouting something out, which really you can't ignore, can you? And that's the same for yourself, really. You've got to interact with them.
Yeah, no. Frequently, you have to stop for the audience to talk back to you. And I was, sorry.
It just shows the professionalism, really, the sort of level you're at, that you can improvise in between, like leaving something behind or, you know, doing something else.
I did a show once where partway through a young lad walked up to the booth, and it was in a special school, and a young lad walked up to the booth and he told Mr. Punch that he had drawn a picture of him and he wanted to give it to him. So Punch leaned over and took the picture of him and thanked him. Then it turned out the whole audience had drawn a picture of Punch, and one by one they all came up and he thanked each one, and I dropped them into my drop bag and carried on. But then the first one decided he wanted his picture back, and I'm looking down and I've got all these pictures, no idea which one it was. So I thought, okay, so Joey the Clown came up and said, we're just going to have a break while someone brings the pictures out, and anyone who wants them back can have them, and then we're going to carry on with our show. I thought, but you just have to, don't you?
Yeah, it's a good job. I'm not saying you ever would, but it's a good job you didn't behind the screen go.
Yes, I know. I thought that.
Yeah, that could have been an interesting. Well, you could have blamed Mr. Punch, I suppose. He's a mischievous fella.
Yes, absolutely. And I had a lad once who was very, very excited, and he brought a sooty puppet. And mum and dad did their best to keep him sitting down, but he wanted Sooty to be in the show. And he just couldn't sit down. So in the end, at the end, I was going to do a boxing match. So I had the boxers come up and they announced that we were going to have a special guest referee of Sooty, and got the lad to come and stand next to the booth with his Sooty puppet up beside it to referee it, which went great for the first minute until Sooty joined in the fight. But it all came out in the wash.
Which is your favourite character, or do you love?
Yes, he was very happy anyway.
Which is your favourite character, Miraiker?
Oh, Mr. Punch. Mr. Punch. Every day you open that bag and he's smiling up at you. I mean, ready to go to work. He's just joyous. Always makes me smile. Yeah.
Who's the hardest character to get into character with? Who's the hardest character, would you say?
The hardest character? Probably the policeman. Because I'm sort of feeling that I'm on the other side.
And yet I've helped them with their inquiries many a time throughout my life.
Exactly, yeah. And I just don't think my heart's in keeping them safe when they're on my hands. So they do get turned into sausages. They go in the stocks. Terrible things happen to policemen in my show.
Yeah. Who gets the most boos from the audience? Or does that depend on the performer?
Yeah, I think it does. But if I do a boxing match at the end, then I do it very much the first character who's from the place you're from and is, and I get the children really on side with him. And then I have Savage Sid from wherever down the road is, and he comes up and goes, "Gah, what are you looking at?" And so that you're telling the audience right from the start who they want to win, and you can get them booing quite well at that.
Yeah, it's a bit like Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks, and or not.
Yeah.
Mick McManus, he was a baddie, weren't he?
I think he was, yeah.
Going by memory.
Yeah. It's a load of fun, isn't it? Playing with the audience and seeing their response. So it's a buzz.
Oh yeah, but when they get going into their world and them into your world as well, it's so rewarding.
Yeah.
I think we've had this conversation before. We it's hard to become a millionaire, Ed. It's a lifestyle rather than a wealth style, isn't it? On there, but we are really fortunate to do that.
We are.
This character that you've got behind you there.
Who have I got behind me? Oh, this is a doctor with a removable hairpiece. And I've got a policeman there and a skeleton. Oh, I've got a witch up here. I don't know if you can see her. She's one of my Halloween ones. And oh, look, this is one of my favourites. I'm sitting at the wrong side, so he's on. There we go. This is PC. Put him on my hand. This is PC Blue Eyes.
Oh,
and yeah, he's I just like the idea of it that he's PC Blue Eyes. He's had all the budget cuts, but they left him with the lights. And I've got the switches in the front of the costume, so that when he's on your hand, you can switch him on and switch him off.
That's awesome. And I'm looking at his hands again on there, the work that goes into them.
Yeah. I think you have to, don't you? You can't skimp on the hands. I've seen some that are like flat paddles, and I don't really like that very much.
Yeah, I noticed on some of the marionettes and now that I've got, it needs new hands, really. I might be getting touched. I might need some hands.
Yeah.
I love making them.
Yes, marionette making. I've never made a marionette because they look really complicated, and I think you've got to get the weighting just right, haven't you?
I think so. So on what I've small repairs that I've done and bits of repairs,
Yeah,
they're. I'm not saying to anybody out there that they're not fun, but they're not as much fun to me as a normal puppet or a hand puppet or a
yeah,
watch it puppet. In the right hands, we had Ian and Tom on the other week, and that they're absolutely great. They bring them to life.
yeah.
But no, I do prefer the hand puppets or the arm puppets for me anyway on there. So you made your own booth.
Yeah.
So if I was to I'm John Smith and I send a message. How do I get into Punch and Judy? What do I do? What do I need to get?
Well, if you want to do Punch and Judy, you need a booth, and I mean that's the most important thing to start with. You've got to have something to perform in, and when I make a booth, they've always got a drop bag because you need to drop things and lots of poppet bars, and they've got painted proscenium arches, and everybody tells me what they want on their proscenium arch. So lots of people want their name on it, and they might have their own coat of arms. They might want, all sorts of different things. So painted proscenium arch, and then once you've got your booth, you need a few puppets. I think you can start doing a show with just a few. You don't need loads and loads to start with. And probably if you're trying to work out a new show, it's probably easier to do it with just a few to start with. And then you need a few props. So you need a swazzle for Mr. Punch, because he doesn't sound right without it. And you need a slapstick, and you're going to need a string of sausages. And I'd say there's your bare minimum.
Okay.
And after that, it's addictive.
It's addictive. That's it. You mentioned the swazzle. Do you make the swazzles?
I do. I make swazzles, and I probably should have had a swazzle nearby before I sat down here, but I haven't.
I was just going to ask that. I was just going to ask.
I should have probably done that, but yeah, a swazzle is Mr. Punch's voice, and without it, it doesn't sound right. So it's what makes Punch sound like Punch.
Is there a seat inside the booth or something, or do you just kneel down? I mean, I don't know how it works behind the.
Oh, okay. No, you stand up. You stand up in the booth because you're going to need to move around a lot. So you're standing, and there's a scenery that hangs down in front of you. Now the scenery is completely see-through from your side, but you've got a blackout behind you so the children can't see you. They can't see through it. And you're working with your hands in front of your face like that, so that you've got quite a lot of movement, but you can see what you're doing. And you stand. In the old days, people used to work in a much taller booth with their hands right up above their heads.
Wow.
And have the poppets above them. So a few people still do. But I always think that's one of the things they used to use as torture, isn't it? Making people hold weights above their heads for a long time. Why would you do it for fun?
It's like a game of tennis. It's really hard.
It hurts, Peter. It hurts.
Yeah.
So, but then again, people used to do their shows to a standing audience in a street. So they needed to be higher up, out of the way. And these days we tend to work to a seated audience. So we can bring the booth down and have our puppets at this level instead. And it's fine.
Is it difficult standing up for quite a long time then in the booth sometimes?
I don't think it is. I always think it's a lot easier than digging roads. I stole that line from a man called Ken Brooks.
Yeah. I think also the puppets on a stand where you're resting your arm like that, and that is easier as well. I did a friend Chris Kendall, who puppeteer from the Dark Crystal, and he's worked with Phil Fletcher and a few others.
Oh,
and he
yeah.
works with a puppet up here. and looking into the camera at audience perspective, everything. And he did a workshop last April gone, the April before, and I went on that. And after 5 minutes with a practice puppet, just a small puppet, my arm was killing me. So, Peter there, who's like this, you must have good tools there.
Sounds like really hard work. So actually, I'm fine. I'm only up this high.
You've still got the weight of the puppet, so you've still got to, after a bit, it's like holding a weight out, isn't it? After a bit, that weight.
Yeah, but because they're moving about, I think that helps. And also, there is that buzz because you've got the audience. And let's face it, we do like an audience, don't we? In fact, I used to do a show for a chap down at a shopping village, and one day he came up to see me with his little girl, and he used to book us there, and he came up to see me with his little girl, and I made her a balloon, and he looked at me and said, "Miraiker, you're quite an exhibitionist." Isn't that why you booked me?
That's right. A wallflower wouldn't be a very good person for the job, would it? Really, somebody quiet.
It wouldn't work, would it?
No, it wouldn't work. So, what other characters have you got coming up, or are they secret? Have you got things coming up?
No, I'm doing this Christmas show at the moment for the next month. Luckily, if we don't get shut down. So I've got the Grinch in that, and an elf and Santa and Mrs. Claus, and Rudolph has got a light up nose and things like that. And I made a present wrapping machine for it, and silly stuff. So who knows what next year's going to bring? But hopefully, there's always a new challenge. People say, we'd really like you to come and do a show, and then they name the show, and it's not something I do. So I say, yes, okay. And then once you've taken the booking, you've got a reason to go and make it.
That's a good attitude to have there. As there's always a method to get around the problem in the.
Yes,
we don't always have enough time to do it, but there always is that in there. So it's a great attitude to have. So just described of what they need. So can somebody come to you now? Can somebody watching this when it goes out live? Can they come up to you and say, right, okay, I wanted to get into Punch and Judy?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But imagine it's somebody like me that does that, and they've never ever used a Punch and Judy at all. Where would you guide people for that? Where would you say you need to go here to learn this or do that?
Well, what I would say, if you've never used Punch and Judy before, then again, we have this great resource, YouTube. There's so many Punch and Judy shows on there. And normally I would say, go out and watch as many shows as you can and talk to the people doing them. But of course, this year, there's not been so many out there. No. But there's plenty on YouTube. And there's so many more shows out there now than there's ever been. We're so lucky. We've got lots of youngsters taking up Punch and Judy, and I'll be honest with you, they put us old people to shame. They come up with new ideas, they bring it all this fresh enthusiasm, and it's a joy to watch them develop.
That is great as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
because it brings Punch and Judy into the 21st century.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got and I think we've got Harry on there. He's one of our latest. And Harry's been putting a show together this year. And he's just started from almost nothing to having a fantastic show that we've all been able to watch when he's put it up on Facebook Live. And it's done really well. We've got youngsters as young as 4 years old, where mum will buy them a little puppet for Christmas, and they're just totally obsessed with it. And they're going to be the punch men of the future.
And how are you finding the journey, Harry?
I find it really good, actually. I've always wanted to be a Punch and Judy performer ever since I was young. I mean, I remember as a kid watching it. I think it was years ago when I went to a museum somewhere on a school trip, because I'm based in Lancashire, when I first saw a Punch and Judy show, I thought it was quite interesting. I never knew anything like that existed in the Victorian times, because I wasn't born in Victorian times. We all weren't, but to look at it, it's just interesting. And without the help of Miraiker, I would have never done Punch and Judy. Even when I tried the swazzle for the first time, I never knew I couldn't do it until now. I thought, wow, I can actually do the swazzle.
And you do it very well, Harry.
You're still young now.
Yes. And then on my virtual background is Mr. Punch that Miraiker gave me as I got it as a birthday present. And the thing I like about my punch is that it's got a bit of blue on it. And when I first looked, it was one of the punches that she was actually going to be selling at the Magic Convention in Blackpool. And I said, I want the one with the blue hat. And she my dad got it me as a Christmas present. Well, as a birthday present. I was like, wow. And the next minute, I got more and more puppets. And I thought, wow, my show's going to be building up now. And then during lockdown, me and my dad actually made a Punch and Judy booth out of wood. And I still think it's one of the best creations we ever done. And without Miraiker, I would have never done Punch and Judy.
You've done really well, Harry. And you and your dad were building that booth. It's just fantastic. You did great.
Yeah.
There's been a few. Go on, sorry, carry on, Harry.
Enjoying this little meeting, actually. I think what I think of Miraiker's puppets are just her creativity on her puppets are just absolutely amazing. I mean, I love every part of the props that she did. Like, I came up with the washing machine idea, which was quite funny. And honestly, I mean, everything about her puppets are just great. I think they're probably the best I've ever came across.
Oh, thanks, Harry.
There has been a few people say that, though. I know I haven't spoken to everybody regarding it, but quite a few people have said the way forward in Punch and Judy is through you because of your kindness to people, and that's not my words. That's what people. I'm not saying you're not kind. I'm not saying I'm kind. It's what people have said to me. As a Miraiker, because if somebody is starting, if she can't help, she knows somebody who can help you. Like Dan, he's mentored people, hasn't he, and whatever. Yeah. And it is a lovely group, isn't it? It's a lovely group of people.
I describe it as just amazing. It's a very kind community, and I've met a lot of new friends throughout it. Well, throughout it, really, it's such a lovely community. I mean, being part of the Punch and Judy Fellowship is good as well. I mean, I'm so proud to be part of that. And I hope that next year I will get a chance to actually take my show out on the road and meet certain performers. And then you never know, I could be the next person to actually bring it back in my local area. Because these days when I'm at events, I don't see it very much.
There's an opening there.
Definitely.
That's a great opening, Harry.
Definitely. Yeah. But I think when we've got a lot of youngsters out there, and when they really get interested, they watch it on YouTube and things. But when they do get in touch, it's always nice if you can find a performer local to them to send them to go and see. So if there's any in York, I send them to see Dan because he's just so good with them. And it's just nice to put them in touch with somebody local that they can actually speak with. So yeah, we've got loads of good youngsters coming up.
What's the main advice then you would give? Is that the main advice you would give to somebody just getting into it?
Yeah, watch lots of shows because everybody brings their own thing to it. And then if you watch loads and loads of shows, you'll find the bits that make you laugh. And if you put in the bits that make you laugh, there's a good chance you'll make the next lot laugh. And whenever I come up with something new, I try to put it onto YouTube, and I'll do my routine with it. And I always think, well, at least it gives somebody a starting point. They can change it after that, but they've got a starting point. So I put the routine on, and then I do it from behind the scenes. So they know how to use the prop. Yeah.
Well, to thought that kind of spoils the magic as well, but
I know, but I think it's only potential performers who are going to watch the behind the scenes one.
Who's
How far-
you come up with the idea at Kidology last year with Gordon Astley? That was awesome. That was how you became the compare for the evening.
That
with
was,
Punch and Judy. That was
yeah. Well, it was when I said to Alec Powell that I'd like to be in the dealer's den, and he said, "Oh, well, look, we're trying to keep this really light-hearted. Can we not, can we just keep it really light-hearted?" So I said, well, I thought I'd make a Gordon Astley puppet because he's so easy to caricature. And so then Alec got a bit excited
I
and
can
said,
imagine, yeah.
"Do you think he could compare it?" And he come up with the name for him to be called More Than Ghastly instead
That
of
was it,
Gordon
More Than
Astley.
Ghastly, yeah.
Well, that was a lot of fun, yes.
It was. We missed it this year, didn't we? And the Jamboree and the other one at Covent Garden.
Yeah.
the Covent Garden one's very big, I believe. It's a very big event, and it was a shame it wasn't on this year, but thank God it was online. I mean, I loved looking back at it, and because I've never been before, but it would be my dream to visit Covent Garden and the Jamboree as well.
Great. Well, I'm sure we'll have at least one of them next year.
Yeah, I think so. Hopefully, towards the end of the year, I think we've got more chance.
Yeah.
I might be wishing for too much for Easter, but we don't know, do we? Nobody knows. We'll get in. We just do what we can do.
Yeah. In the meantime, keep on puppeteering.
That's it. Keep on building. Keep on puppeteering.
Yeah.
And the virus will never change Mr. Punch. It will never change Mr. Punch. He's still a living character as usual.
Absolutely. Although there have been a few of the other characters in the show this year who've come up wearing face masks.